Frame Raider.
When it comes to Saturday morning cartoons that did space exploration right, not many examples come to mind. Frankly, I feel as if today's show, Buzz Lightyear of Star Command, would make a killer 2D animated Star Trek series. I grew up with this show even though I never had the Disney Channel. For whatever reason, a licensing trade took place that swapped shows between ABC Kids and Disney. This was one of those shows that they crossed over, and having already been a huge fan of Toy Story, checking this out was a no-brainer. Although I had already been introduced to the show by the straight-to-VHS and DVD movie that my parents bought me. So getting back on track here, what was the fate of Buzz Lightyear of Star Command? Well, a lot of people will tell you it just ended up being cancelled, but a more recent interview with the series creator himself gives us some further insight. I actually learned a lot from a video by Jace Deal, who interviews Tad Stones, creator of the show, so do check that out if you're interested in the series. It was an incredible watch, and I don't want to give too much away from it. It really deserves to be watched on its own. There are a few things I'd like to pull from the interview though, like how the show wasn't necessarily cancelled, just discontinued. At the time, Disney would set a deal for a certain number of episodes to be made for a new show. The default set was 65 episodes. Buzz Lightyear Star Command got 65 episodes. So basically, after the show had its default run, it wasn't renewed for more. Sure, it's a shame. The show did have so much potential, even though I will admit it had a pretty good run. Why did it stop there, though? It's hard to say, although Tad Stones has a few theories of his own. At the time, John Lasseter had a huge influence in Disney, and the rumor is that Lasseter quote-unquote hates the show, despite this only really been heard through the grapevine. I'm not saying Stones goes with that as his go-to theory, but he has another point to make that gives more of a suggestion to someone on the ups not liking the show.
Here's all these cartoon characters, and here's this female character, but she's got like 3 eyes. It was basically, yeah, somebody put Mira Nova there, and that was and they took it out. Which to me is just silly.
Not just that, but as I mentioned in the last Buzz Lightyear video, Mira herself was given so little attention in the show's marketing. The only official merchandise of her was from McDonald's, with a horizontal spinning top on the spaceship toy. In other regions, kids' meal purchasers would get a miniature plastic Mira, which still to this day I can't find sold separately from an expensive set. Dang it, I need a Mira to put next to my booster in XR. Yeah, I'm not too worried about finding a Buzz Lightyear to go with them, you know, there's a lot of them out there to say the least. Fun fact, the Buzz Lightyear show has 0.5 higher in its score on IMDb than the movie. Is the show better than the movie? Well, I'll let you be the judge of that. Personally, I think the show has its ups and downs. It's easy to take 2 episodes and decide which one you like more than the other, but maybe that's just me. Now, as a tribute to the show, I wanted to do something really special because these days it seems to be almost entirely forgotten. People do occasionally bring up the movie, but nobody ever really brings attention to the show, so what better way to do so than to rewatch every single episode and do very quick reviews of them? Hey, any excuse to watch an awesome show that contributes to work on Frame Raider is a brilliant excuse for me. Lastly, I'm aware that on a technical level the show has 65 episodes, but the first 3 episodes are just the pilot movie split into 3 parts, so for the context of this video, I'm just gonna say there's 62 episodes, starting with Episode 1, The Torque Armada. Each episode begins with a 3D animated Toy Story scene where Buzz heroically saves Wheezy from a burning box. This is followed by one of 7 possible intro outros where Buzz sits in front of the TV, slams face first into the TV, nearly gets pulverized by Zurg, you get the picture.
These are the adventures of Buzz Lightyear of Star Command!
In this first episode, the team of Rangers are scouting Trade World, the criminal capital of the Gamma Quadrant.
Suspect, Torque, wanted in all 50 sectors.
Here's the first recurring foe in the series, Torque. Isn't much special about him really, he's just a space terrorist more or less. As a result, this episode isn't, in my opinion, a very good introduction for the series, but I don't think back then anybody was watching the show in order, to be fair. As per usual, XR's dialogue is very well done in both writing and tone. Larry Miller is a familiar face to me, having been on both 8 Simple Rules, and I'm just now finding out he was not in fact the dad from that 70s show. I swear, up until now, I thought that was the same guy.
Multi-limbed aliens. Hate 'em!
Well, that's pretty close-minded now, isn't it, Buzz? Anyways, while they do seem to loosely reintroduce the characters after the pilot movie, it's all done very quickly. I think I'd actually prefer it this way since, well, it's not exactly a show based on continuity. There is some world building, what with explaining the types of duties Star Command tasks the Space Rangers outside of tackling threats. Still, I don't think this was the best episode to begin with. You'd figure a first episode would be sure to imply what the series is going to be about, and it does, but it leaves out a couple what I would consider important details. There's one part of the episode where a fellow Space Ranger very condescendingly lets Buzz know that Torque managed to escape while making remarks like, "Keep up the good work, kids, maybe you'll be promoted to crossing guards," which is pretty strange considering both before and after this moment Buzz is seen as one of, if not the highest ranking officer in Star Command next to Commander Nebula. After all, Buzz wrote half the regulations as we're told in the pilot, so you would think not only would this conversation simply not exist, but the dude could get into a lot of trouble for talking to Buzz like that, no? It's a very strange inconsistency of character here, as this never happens again throughout the series with anyone else. Buzz even frequently remarks about this character throughout the episode, even though I'm fairly certain he himself never makes a return in the series. Nonetheless, the scene only really exists to get Buzz jealous and want to go after Torque, so I think that's the only reason for it, but that doesn't really give them the excuse to completely deviate from the character's origins. But that's all I really have to say about the first episode, other than Zerg capturing Torque and giving him the ability to split himself into multiples. This detail is a bit more important in future episodes. Without Zerg though, this character wouldn't be remotely interesting, he's just a generic thug. I wouldn't call this a good episode, but it's not necessarily a bad one either, it's just kinda there.
You haven't seen the last of me, Buzzcut.
Now on to episode 2.
It's coming up fast, look!
Gravitina. Just when I thought I talked about the last episode a bit too much, here comes Gravitina. Truly one of the highlights for the show. Funny to come to this after such a middle ground episode. In this one, they introduce yet another villain character who is not given too much screen time after this episode. In fact, she might be the least recurring foe in the series. Well, outside of a species called the Raenoks, which are some of the most boring villains I've ever seen in a show, but we'll get to it. Sorry, I just gotta stop for a moment to appreciate XR.
A smile like yours, sweetheart, could melt my diodes. You're new around here, and if I may...
Sorry, I don't date robots.
Then that gives us something in common. Neither do I.
You can't not like this guy, especially in this episode. Oh boy, they really got his circuits revved up for this one. And then there's Booster.
Lightyear could handle this one in hypersleep.
This episode quickly demonstrates Buzz's high-ranking status in Star Command. That's Commander Nebula talking, head of operations. So yeah, that rookie conflict from the last episode, still not sure what that was about. What ethnicity is Commander Nebula anyways? I could never figure that out. So this episode has a lot to do with relationships. Specifically, I think they went this route to demonstrate to the audience that there's no intentional chemistry between Buzz and Team Ranger Mira Nova. I'm glad they cut away from that stereotype of the one female involved being the love interest of the main protagonist. In Buzz Lightyear of Star Command, Mira is just as much the hero as everyone else involved, and it's a refreshing take.
What does that even mean?
Means we're about to kick some asteroid.
So they have some intercourse with some asteroids. No, I don't mean what you're thinking, but eventually I will. The culprit behind a bunch of asteroids heading towards their base Star Command is the one Gravitina, who has a really big head. So much so that she can control gravity, quite dangerously. Why does she threaten Star Command and the Galactic Alliance?
The mistress of mass and all of its attraction. And I have a crush on you.
Yeah, that's about it. Gravitina wants to slam Buzz. She uses her many gravitonic abilities in devious ways to try and lure Buzz into liking her, which goes about as well as you could imagine.
An anonymous benefactor is paying me quite handsomely to destroy Star Command.
Zerg.
Okay, so it isn't entirely about her having a crush on Buzz, but that's the most entertaining part of this episode. So much so that they end up making a lot of jokes that I'm sure kids didn't much understand at the time.
Krell Mist 7, a masculine yet alluring scent that releases the id in all of us.
That's not helping.
Well, it's just a start. Now take off your pants.
What?
XR hatches the idea of Buzz pretending to like Gravitina back, which Buzz nobly states he couldn't do because it's dishonest. But XR has the point of giving him time to find out what's causing her power to increase to the lengths of being able to redirect asteroids at Star Command, which has all the while turned out to be a very dangerous thing back there. Buzz Lightyear of Star Command is as equally crude as it is classy, and you gotta love it for that.
What I am wanting is something to make me feel warm inside. Something like...
Clamps! Hey!
There's a hidden joke here, I think. Also, I just wanted to bring your attention to the fact that an animated porn parody of this episode exists. Yes, a show with barely any fandom left, with not much fan art, somehow happens to have an actual animated porn parody. You can't make this stuff up, except someone clearly did. I can't really review a porn, but I kind of find it hilarious.
Buzz, no!
Buzz, yes.
Anyways, XR saves the day by locating the power source and shutting it off.
No matter what happens, we can still be friends.
Friends?
Episode 3, XL. Another episode, another recurring villain. I promise this isn't the entire series. So episode 3 introduces XL, basically an evil prototype of XR, who happens to be the reason Commander Nebula hates robots in the first place. XL keeps destroying other robots in search of better scrap parts to put himself together a la Frankenstein's monster. He's not a bad character, perhaps not the most original, but I think he's fun. Now, honestly, we've got a lot of episodes to look at today, and we'd be here all day if we took more than a paragraph's worth of reading for each episode. For those that I don't have much to say about, like this one, I'll just give you a brief rundown and a rating. Episode 4, Little Secrets. A planet is testing their defense security, which Buzz gives a 4-star rating. Their security is to protect a power plant, which is quite literally power derivative from actual plants. As a gift, the owner lets each ranger take home a miniature plant. Booster stupidly takes home a different one because he thought it looked prettier. It grows a lot, it becomes a problem at Star Command. They all try to keep it on the down low so Buzz doesn't find out.
So, how about a picture?
How about a spanking?
Episode 5, Inside Job. Okay, so this is one of those 3 that I had downloaded from the net, so if you think it looks different, that's why. I also happen to notice the intro isn't the same as the episodes before, and for a good while after this on my DVD set. Far as I can tell, this is a later intro for the series playing on an earlier episode. That implies that the episodes were rendered on more than one occasion. For what reason, I have no idea. Also, I like this introduction a lot better. It shows far more action scenes that, well, they're all from later in the series. They even have that Cthulhu monster scene from the intro of Rick and Morty. Similarly to that recurring scene, every episode of Star Command has this one part of the intro where Buzz and Zurg are fighting in giant mechs, built to resemble the side they're fighting for. I could tell you more about how effective this scene is in the intro, but, I just think it's neat. So, right, Episode 5. The ambassador of a planet uninvolved with the Galactic Alliance has finally decided to become a part of it. A faction of the planet, however, disagrees with this decision. Did I happen to mention the residents of this planet, the Gargantians, happen to be incredibly small? So basically the story goes, the faction wants the ambassador eliminated. How will they do it? By disguising themselves as a space ranger known as Flash. Quite literally, as they make a robot suit of a human being that happens to fit 5 of themselves inside it. They use this human presence to gain the trust of the one and only Buzz Lightyear so he can stand alongside him when the honor is granted, as to sabotage and kill the ambassador before the agreement is made. There's an annoying dynamic of Booster trying to one-up Flash, so that's a thing.
I hate it when a promising rookie turns out to be 5 tiny terrorists in a promising rookie suit.
Yeah, that's funny, but pretty much the only funny moment in this entire episode, unfortunately. Episode 6, Nosferatu. Oh boy, it's the root of all fan art, Nosferatu. A really cool energy vampire robot that has way too much fanfiction. At its core, the episode focuses on another recurring villain. I'd have to say this is indeed the strongest entry in the lineup of recurring villains, though. It starts with a return from Warp Dark Matter. You remember him from the pilot? I think possibly the best way to introduce a new recurring character is by means of another. If you watch these yourself, you might notice how there's a strong lack of any outside force in these episodes with the recurring characters. The only real exception is Torque. This time you got Warp, you got Zurg, it's not just the Rangers and a new character. Sure, you don't have to do things this way to get away with it, but they did it here and, well, makes me more interested in the new character. It doesn't feel nearly as forced. It's really just a coincidence, though, that the character, Nosferatu, is a strong villain. So who, how, and why? Well, it starts by provoking this box that Zurg wants, which Warp is trying to steal for him. A box with the label Nosferatu on it. Team Lightyear takes off with it back to Star Command. I guess better in their hands than Zurg's, right?
But Lightyear got the box.
Well, of course he did, dipstick. That was my plan.
Uh-oh. XR goes to check on the box and more uh-ohs ensue. So XR gets bitten by the energy vampire, and on the day of his performance report, triple uh-oh.
Ah, the communications network. Let the feast begin.
Red alert! This is not a drill!
Commander Nebula has ordered a red alert.
Now, what's wrong with this picture?
Launch! Go, go, go!
Care to make it a threesome?
I think the people behind this show knew this would be an important episode, because the amount of action shots is far greater than anything seen previous. So much so that a lot of shots from this episode made it into the introductions. The animations are also particularly more impressive than before, with movement that consists of full limb rotations. There's a reason for this, and I'll explain later in the video. One thing I think could have been improved upon was the humor in this one, which is nearly non-existent. Pretty out of character for the show, but all the action you're familiar with is still very much here. It's one of those episodes that people remember, and I can see why. It has many action scenes that hold up very well. I like how Commander Nebula has this, peg leg cannon. Episode 7, The Planet Destroyer. So, this is a last-minute update, but for some reason my conversion of this episode from the DVD crapped out at 7 minutes. Each episode is 22 minutes long approximately, so I had to download this one from the net like those other 3. Anyways, poised at the edge of the galaxy, Emperor Zurg has been secretly building a weapon with the destructive capacity to annihilate an entire planet.
And you, my friend,
surrender immediately or more planets will go bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Zurg decides the next planet to target will be planet Tangia, which is Ranger Mira Nova's homeworld. So of course, the internal tensions rise. This episode also serves to inform the viewers of how Mira's father disapproves of Star Command, and more especially his daughter's involvement with it. Keep in mind, Mira was a princess. I think such disapproval makes sense. Zurg manages to get to Tangia, and in fear of more planets vanishing, the Senate orders a surrender. While this happens, Nebula commands Team Lightyear to find this planet-destroying weapon in a last effort to prevent the surrender. I really liked the mystery of this one, even if it was rather tame compared to some that come after. Oh, without spoiling too much, Tangia was safe. I guess it's necessary to tell you that in this episode is where Mira is taught how to read minds with her Tangean ghosting powers. We see Mira ghost her hand into someone's brain earlier, particularly episode 3, XL, but she isn't reading his mind, just interrogating him with the threat of brain scrambling. Are Space Rangers legally allowed to do that? Anyways, at first I figured this was an inconsistency with the series order, but no, I guess it wasn't. However, there is eventually one serious flaw in the order listed online that we'll get to in time.
Get on the shell phone, Tess.
Wait, what?
She's the Little Mermaid, next on Disney's...
Oh, right. This show was never released off-air. Episode 8, The Beasts of Karn. This one introduces a, recurring character who isn't evil this time. Introducing Buzz's crush, Dr. Ozma Furbana, one of the most honored animal research scientists in the galaxy. Basically, she lives on a planet full of prehistoric life.
Follow me. That's Dr. Furbana.
Furbana is very against animal abuse, to the point where if you get yourself hurt, that's totally fine so long as the animal's okay. God forbid you could die and Furbana'd be fine with it if the animal got away unscathed. Okay, Karen.
They're just following their natural instinct to feed.
And see, I'm just following my natural instinct not to be food.
Basically, the episode focuses on the Ranger team checking up to make sure she's okay, because she hasn't been responding to their calls. Whatever. Booster gets kidnapped by a poacher who tries to sell him like the other animals he's captured. Yeah, I don't know, this one's kinda boring. I think now's a better time than ever to say that this is just my opinion. I've long thought TV shows are incredibly subjective unless they're outright awful, but I wouldn't say a single episode of this series is outright awful, so gotta make use of these rankings somehow. Episode 9, Tag Team. In this episode, we get the confirmation that Buzz's head is in fact normal behind the weird purple covering that's never explained and only necessary for a few select Rangers, I guess. So Buzz has an implant, it seems. As a precaution for the security breach, Nebula places Buzz under suspension until they're able to get it removed for him. So we get to see Buzz on his normal everyday routines, except he's still wearing the... Well, Buzz is a pretty radical car, so that's neat. Of course, Buzz, being the non-stop heroic he is, finds a way to get to the bottom of this on his own. As it turns out, both Buzz and Warp Dark Matter have had an implant in their necks since the Academy.
Implant confirmed! Uh-oh, how did we miss that?
How did they miss that? In case you didn't see the movie or my video of the movie, Warp was Buzz's partner before he betrayed the Galactic Alliance. As it turns out, these three alien weirdos placed implants in the two for they were the highest-ranking students in the Academy. The aliens only did it for knowledge and experimentation. Supposedly when Warp went bad, it messed up their studies for a brief time, but then they themselves had an internal debate over what's really better, good or evil. An interesting excuse for a character study. This leads to the two being shown footage of themselves training in the Academy, and it's quite interesting to see the two in their earlier years. Nonetheless, the two will have to use their wits together to escape without being dissected. It's around this point where you realize the show doesn't really care to focus on the comedy, on the exception. Some episodes like this are pretty much devoid of any humor, in exchange for focusing on the science fiction aspect. I'm not sure if this was done as an approach to change the pace once in a while, or they just didn't have any good ideas for humor in this story. That, or maybe it's because XR isn't a focus this time. Yeah, it seems XR does most of the comedic dialogue, and granted an interview I watched before, Tad Stone stated a lot of his cracks are actually improv by the voice actor. Gotta give props where it's due. Episode 10, The Main Event. Torque is back. Hooray! So this is a weird one. Some dude from Trade World was hired by some snot-nosed kid in exchange for entertainment. The kid wants to see fights. So the guy sets up conflicts in that area, eventually managing to bring Lightyear there by means of Torque. Buzz defeats Torque, and Zurg is coming now. He wants to collect some kind of bombs hidden beneath the surface of the planet that this takes place on. Awfully convenient mission and timing. After all, that dude from Trade World wasn't expecting this. XR is involved with this one, and he has some funny bits, but not too much. You might be wondering why the series so far has seemed kinda meh. Well, the reason for that is because it's the kind of show where half of it is great, the other half is kind of forgettable, but at the very least they are mildly entertaining. This comes across as one of those episodes at first, but in a strange twist, the second half is actually quite good, once Zurg comes into the picture. I guess you could say it just takes a bit too long to establish itself. At least the art is consistently good. Also, we finally get to see Zurg use that cannon he's known for having attached in Toy Story 2.
Oh, the big bad emperor doesn't seem so all-powerful now, does he?
I have to say, it's refreshing to see another power being dominant over Zurg. It puts him into a weird position where you realize Zurg isn't all that much without his ship, riches, and henchmen. Coming after the last episode, there's another thing that comes to mind. In a sticky situation, Buzz and Warp can work together to escape the clutches of another. Buzz and Zurg, on the other hand, is a no-go. Zurg is only determined to either destroy Lightyear or escape the situation he's got himself into. As soon as Zurg thinks he's located the problem, he heads straight for it, leaving Lightyear in the dust.
I'll send my lawyers after you! I can! I'm rich!
No. You know, it's twerps like you that give evil a bad name.
It really is a shame that, for more than the first half of the episode, it's all just establishing guff that is simply boring. If you feel up to sitting through that so the latter half of it makes sense, it's enjoyable. Episode 11, The Return of XL. XL is back. Hooray! At least we're back in Ship 42 with Team Lightyear again. In this episode, the team is headed towards a distress beacon coming from a planet emitting plasma beams from its surface. XR gets sidetracked once they land, and...
Oh, hey, XL.
XL is still upset about being decommissioned while XR is getting all the glory. Turns out while he was in the slammer, he studied and discovered that XR has just one part that XL doesn't, an AFD. XR deals with XL, however somehow he managed to leave with XR's AFD. XR proceeds to have an existential crisis. He goes on a long journey to find his missing part while Team Lightyear tries to locate him. XR's long journey ends up with him running into XL again. Still nobody knows what an AFD is. Well, an AFD is an air freshening device because the little green men thought XR smells. Episode 12, Strange Invasion. Oh, I love this episode. It's the one where Team Lightyear crash lands on an alien planet in an unexplored sector of the galaxy. But this time they're the normal ones with a functioning society, scared by the human invaders. This has probably been done before, but heck if it's not a very entertaining concept to entertain in. It perfectly parodies our own historical reactions to potential alien sightings. Oh my gosh, they have jeeps. Of course they have actual planet Earth jeeps. This is just the stupidest thing, and I love it so much.
It looks like we've got aliens.
While Buzz, Mira, and XR are captured, Booster crash lands elsewhere, particularly a more uninhabited location of the planet. That is until...
a neighborhood?
where Booster becomes a cute little alien girl's pet. It's actually quite adorable. The episode also has a strangely Animaniacs feel to it. This is one of those adventures where they perfectly blended both science fiction and comedy. It's precisely the type of thing I think about when I reflect back on this show. Helps that there isn't a dull moment. Perfection from the moment they crash land up until the end. An absolutely comical thrill.
I'm gonna call you Pickles.
Pickles?
Episode 13, The Taking of PC-7. PC-7 is a state-of-the-art incarceration facility where criminals are taught and repurposed into law-abiding citizens through the use of the newly invented UPA, Universal Personality Adjuster. How does the president's mouth work? Sometimes her top mouth is speaking, other times her bottom mouth, other times both? Is there an explanation for that anywhere? Seriously, I want to know.
Keep your trap shut, both of them!
Booster and XR are bringing Torque to custody, but he dupes them. And then he dupes himself. As you probably expected, the UPA turns out to be used as a weapon, and Torque sets it up for Booster, who goes haywire. Temporarily. Just watch this scene.
Don't worry, the helmet didn't work on me. My brain isn't all in my head.
Where is it then?
Yeah.
Episode 14, Mindwarp.
Wait. No, Your Honor, I swear I had no idea she was under warranty. Oh, Mira.
Good lord, that's definitely the most risque joke XR ever makes in the show. So that snot-nosed kid from episode 10 is back. Did I forget to mention he's super rich and owns an electronic company known as CompuClerm? Anyways, he's decided there's a lot of money in the evil business and starts trying to sell this fighting robot to villains for profit. One goes after the Ranger team while Buzz is on vacation. They defeat it, and it takes off. So they head over to the CompuClerm headquarters, and the secretary treats them like anybody else who comes in. I just had to give attention to this bit here because are they not the equivalent of police officers? How can they be treated like that with no returning prosecution? They're even able to place people under arrest, so why is this any different? My only speculation is that these planets are not yet a part of the Galactic Alliance, and therefore they have no control over them. That's my only real theory. They make their way inside the CompuClerm facility, where it turns out Buzz has been captured, and his brain is being used to program that robot that they were fighting earlier, hence why it knew Star Command maneuvers. Now they have to find a way to free Buzz, who happens to have been brainwashed into serving CompuClerm. Episode 15, Mira's Wedding. Turns out Mira's gotta get married, or something.
You screamed!
Look at this dress! Wouldn't you scream?
So some Tangean dude basically captures her and brings her back home. Team Lightyear was thankfully allowed to tag along for some reason.
You are my firstborn, and an offer has been made for your hand.
Turns out the guy who brought Mira back to Tangia just wants to overthrow the hierarchy. I didn't mention this earlier, but there was an episode where Mira makes a remark regarding a Tangean security prevention saying,
Come on, like there's Tangean criminals.
Well,
go ahead, make my bouquet.
Episode 16, Panic on Bathyos. I guess they needed an underwater episode eventually. Someone's been stealing crystals on planet Bathyos, and Team Lightyear is tasked to find out who. This is one of those Disney twist villain sort of deals. The motive? Well, it turns into speciesism against air breathers, I guess. It's not the most interesting episode, but at least there are some fun deviations, like the air breather dome for air-breathing residents on their water-breathing planet. Why does that exist?
Ow! It seems so normal!
Episode 17, Shiv Katall. BrainPod 13 has escaped from Zerg in hopes of starting anew. Zerg isn't a fan, so Zerg calls on a mysterious hitman known as Shiv Katall to retrieve him. Commander Nebula announces this new plan of Zerg's to Team Lightyear, who gets ready to jump into action, except Buzz states that when it comes to Shiv Katall, it's best he handles things on his own. There's a twist here that I won't get into, but yeah, pretty good one. Episode 18, Stress Test. Buzz is heckin' stressed and it's affecting his judgment. He thinks everything is the fault of Zerg, including this pen.
Yeah, Zerg's probably going,
how can I destroy the universe without my pen?
So he's basically forced to go on a vacation on a peaceful resort. This one has some witty humor in it that, to go over, would kinda spoil it, so I'll leave it there. You might notice we're really starting to grind through episodes now. Well, that's because at this point we've pretty much established the gist of the show. Other than when new stuff is introduced, or maybe when there's an episode I liked a bit much, we're gonna be speeding things up from here. Episode 19, A Zoo Out There. Senators are being kidnapped one by one on Capital Planet, but this time Zerg seemingly has nothing to do with it. In a failed attempt to disguise Buzz, the kidnapper ends up taking Team Lightyear without him. The kidnapper is actually looking to capture different species.
A Joe alien, excellent. A Tangean, rare indeed.
Ultimately, the race of robots, if that's what you'd call such a thing, from episode 9 are building a zoo, and they've become the new exhibits. The entire episode revolves around the concept of how zoos can be cruel to their lesser beings, which then turns into animal experimentation with those who act up. It feels a bit preachy. I'm not sure if that's what they were intending, but yeah, it does come off that way. I don't really care if that's their prerogative or not. All I know is that the episode is not great, but not bad. Episode 20, Root of Evil. A family is eating their broccoli surprise when suddenly the broccoli surprises them. Team Lightyear is on the job. After some looking around, Booster finds the remaining bag of veggies in the kitchen, originating from Joad, Booster's own homeworld. But of course, as you could expect at this point, it's not Joad's problem.
Not even Buzz Lightyear can stop my mutant veggies.
The absurdity of this one makes me want to like it, but it does the whole Disney twist villain thing yet again. Well, once I can let it pass, 2 or more just becomes tired. Episode 21, Supernova.
Have you ever ghosted through an energy source before?
Yes, you have, in the pilot episode.
No, but it's gotta beat blowing up.
Mira gets radioactive poisoning of some kind, which makes her, supernova? Mira feels so energetic and power-hungry that she decides to go attempt taking on the evil Emperor Zerg all on her own, except this was all a trap. And then Buzz and the gang go try to save her. But this was all a trap! Episode 22, Downloaded. Warp's hunting for Galactic Alliance data. He uses what they call a techno-tick to sabotage and shut down the mainframe computer.
It'll be tricky, but I might be able to prevent a complete shutdown.
I haven't mentioned this yet, but here's a very clear example. Sometimes when the animators want it to appear as if XR is focusing on something in particular, they give him pupils, something he otherwise never has. I've always wondered if this was really a good idea or not. Perhaps it was just a lazy way to not emphasize the roundy bits he has for eyeballs, because I do think there is a way to do this without resorting to this sort of fourth wall breaking tactic. I mean, whenever this happens, all I'm thinking of is why the animators decided to draw him that way for this scene. Anyways, XR manages to save the computer in the nick of time. However, this results in him being hooked up to the computer long enough to memorize the entire database of the Galactic Alliance. Word gets out that XR is so knowledgeable, and Emperor Zerg puts a bounty on him for any willing villain to capture and bring in. Now Team Lightyear has to do their best to protect XR until they can remove the memories. Episode 23, The Plasma Monster. Some dude wants his daughter to join the Space Ranger Academy and Booster wants to slam. Yeah, can you imagine these two going at it? Something's a little wrong with that picture. They go on a mission that ends up with them crash landing on a snowy planet with a plasma monster. The girl is dating the plasma monster. Okay. The concept is weird, but the episode's actually pretty entertaining with some good jokes. Particularly the performance of the voice actors is hilarious.
I hope we can still be
friends.
The plasma monster calls Booster dope at one point. I'm surprised that landed in a show for kids.
But now I see you're pretty dope.
Is that a good thing?
Episode 24, The Crawling Flesh. Zerg has supposedly created a horrible ranger-eating monster. Booster and XR stay back in Ship 42 while Buzz and Mira stealthily make their way over to Zerg's tower. Where they get caught. Zerg experiments on them. Something really gross happens. I remember when I was young, this episode really freaked me out.
Can you understand what they're saying?
Not a word, Evil Emperor Zurg. As planned.
Booster and XR come to the rescue thinking that Buzz and Mira are the horrible ranger-eating monster. Chaos ensues. They make their way back to Star Command. Like many times before it, chaos ensues. They begin leaking the same weird substance that turned them into the goopy mess they are, which manages to create more disgusting goopy messes. Chaos occurs. Episode 25, Dirty Work. Team Lightyear is hungry, so they go and get breakfast. The restaurant owner is struggling with the amount of orders and has a meltdown, but shortly after is made aware of a new product that'll do all the stuff for him. He orders one, and then suddenly Nos4A2 appears.
Breakfast, the most important attack of the day.
Episode 26, The Slayer.
Several days ago, that energy vampire Nos4A2 escaped from prison planet PC-7.
Well, that didn't take long. I mean, they just captured him in the last few minutes of running time. But just seconds later...
Buzz, it's me, XR, the brave little ranger who powered down Nos4A2 with a flick of my fingers.
So then, this is a sequel to the original Nos4A2 episode, huh? And here we have the first undeniable evidence that the order listed online is not as official as it might seem. However, this gets more evident with an episode down the line. Anyhow, robots are being terrorized across Trade World. Except, oh no, Plazuka residue.
Plazuka residue. That kind of weaponry isn't standard issue for a soda machine. Or the energy vampire. Looks like we got ourselves another player.
In particular, this robot savior. This young girl, Savvy SL2, was adopted by robots who are no more because of the energy vampire Nos4A2. And now you have a motive.
Do you see a photon gyro trigger anywhere? Well, good, you found one. Oh, this one'll do.
These are my parents.
So, I don't think this episode's really anything special, but this moment here really caught me off guard. That's freaking brutal, dude. Episode 27, The Lightyear Factor. A brain pod made an explosive weapon that managed to open a portal to another dimension. Everything in this dimension is the same, with the exception of being basically entirely destroyed by evil Buzz Lightyear. Zurg invites evil Buzz to take over his universe, and the first thing on his list is to capture good Buzz Lightyear. Strange hijinks occur when Team Lightyear has to fight against their own.
Booster?
Episode 28, Clone Rangers. If it ain't alternate dimensions, it's gotta be clones, right? But instead of clones, they turn into babified clones. Given the lack of maturity, they start causing problems for Zurg before he even gets the chance to pit them against Team Lightyear. Of course, they do eventually fulfill their purpose, which results in jealousy because they have a cool robot dude and they don't. Episode 29, Bunzel Fever. According to Joad folklore, if a Joadian misses an annual ceremony known as the Bunzel Harvest, they'll catch something known as Bunzel Fever. Booster, the Joadian, decides he doesn't need to go to the harvest, but as it turns out, it's not just a story of folklore. While Booster tries to hide his symptoms, the crew fights some familiar faces. What's weird about this whole scenario is, the Bunzel Harvest hasn't even happened for him to miss it yet, so this all would be going on regardless?
Bunzel!
Episode 30, Devolutionaries. Bina Penardian is a mystical planet hosting many mysterious energies. Warp Dark Matter's ship has been spotted in the area, but when Team Lightyear arrives, it appears his ship is void of any life signs. While XR stays below, Warp runs into him. Star Command is on the job.
I've got a little problem. Named Lightyear.
Lightyear! 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 Lightyear!
Right.
Warp uses the energies collected against Team Lightyear, which turns them into prehistorics. Now it's up to XR to restore the crew and stop Warp from collecting enough gas to turn the entire galaxy into prehistoric cavemen. Episode 31, Head Case. XR is showing signs of mental fatigue. For any of you thinking XR has gone a bit out of line in some episodes, well, Mira hands it to him here.
Mira, where did you learn to snake dance?
Is that what you see here? 'Cause I see a sexist robot pig who I'm gonna knock—
Why don't you take the weekend off, XR?
So now it's time for XR, the robot ranger, to go on vacation. I would have never thought robots needed that. Too bad his driver is...
Hey, what gives? XL?
XL manages to steal XR's suit from him, and use this disguise to infiltrate Star Command and plant a really big bomb. XR has to prove to the team that it's really him, while he uses XL's suit to escape back to Star Command. Well, we have officially made it halfway into the series. Besides a few notable exceptions and favorites, I'm gonna really start trimming these down. It's taken me like a week to get up to this point, and I'd really like to get this video out this month, so here we go. Episode 32, The Yukari Imprint. Team Lightyear is picking up a senator on Trade World, but typical for Booster, he sees something that directs his attention. A pod known as a Yukari that will hatch into a pet. taking on the form of whatever closest life form is around when hatching. This mini booster duplicates and causes chaos on their ship, all the while trying to safely escort the Senator to Luma 9. Episode 33, The Shape Stealer. One of Zurg's brain pods has invented a living, shape-shifting fabric that'll seek out Buzz Lightyear. It takes control of whatever able body is around in an attempt to literally kill Buzz. I'm actually quite content with their decision to near immediately reveal the Shape Stealer to Team Lightyear, because instead of your typical betrayal story, you get more scenes of the team actively trying to learn more about it and capture it. All I can say otherwise is that Commander Nebula should get his commanding license revoked for the multiple terrible decisions and lack of precautions he makes in this episode.
I'm marking this case closed!
Episode 34, Star-Crossed. Another brain pod has decided to jump ship from Zurg's command. He has to find a new bounty hunter to replace Shiv Katall. Introducing Romak, a Tangean grounder ready to serve. Problem: Romak is from Tangia. Okay, that's not a huge problem, but the real problem is Mira Nova is from Tangia and actually knows Romak. In fact, he was once her lover. That's a really strange, Pizza Planet cameo.
Pizza Planet! Delivery!
Was it ever established that Pizza Planet was a registered Buzz Lightyear property? I mean, I guess it makes sense. Flashback.
Hey, not all grounders are ignorant boomers.
This show was really ahead of its time in humor.
You don't understand what this is doing to me, you know? Because I've really missed you.
I know the feeling.
Why is this like an extremely well-acted scene? Episode 35, Haunted Moon.
No la, no one, no la, no one.
If you've seen and liked the Haunted Lighthouse from the Berenstain Bears cartoon, you'll love this.
But you said there was no such things as ghosts. Only because I hadn't seen that.
Episode 36, Stranger Invasion. This is a sequel to one of the series' best episodes, Strange Invasion. Zurg has discovered Roswell and plans to turn it into Planet Z East. Team Lightyear has to stop Zurg before he uses the planet's secret powers to destroy Capital Planet. At the end, Buzz unites with his alter ego, Mrs. Nesbit.
You didn't say anything about wearing dresses.
Episode 37, Eye of the Tempest. A distress call is sent to 42. On landing, Buzz meets with an ex-member of their science team who previously went too far and got canned from Star Command. He then used his experiments on himself, which turned him into an ultra-powerful humanoid. He seeks revenge on Lightyear. Also, his daughter quickly begins to crush on Buzz, who will have to be delicate as to not hurt her feelings. This feels like 2 episodes nonsensically thrown into one. Episode 38, Revenge of the Monsters. Okay, here is the clearest example of the show's listing online being way out of order. Not only does this episode feature a monster that is yet to be introduced later on, but it even has flashbacks to said episode, which hasn't been seen yet. By all means, this is a sequel to a later episode in every sense of the word, so I'm gonna swap this one out for episode 52, Wirewolf. We'll come back to this one when we get to where Wirewolf is listed. Wirewolf. Ty Parsec is a space ranger on a scouting mission with his robot assistant. That is until his robot gets attacked by the energy vampire Nosferatu. Buzz Lightyear comes in as backup, but Ty secretly hates Buzz.
Oh, well, just as long as I didn't send...
Ty, buddy!
Him! Look, where's a wormhole when you need one?
His snouty arrogance is consistently displayed throughout the episode. Still, he just wants the credit for once instead of Buzz. Just as Nosferatu is about to lunge at XR, Ty jumps into the way and happens to come across an unfortunate circumstance. Unfortunately, a bite from an energy vampire isn't just a flesh wound.
No one ever finds that place.
Still gives me chills to this day. This is a kid's show, what were they thinking? I love it. For most of the episode, Ty has no idea what's going on. For the moment he turns into a wirewolf, the evil presence completely takes over him, though part of his conscience seems to remain during his perils of robotic destruction. His envious nature for Buzz's heroic status makes this an engaging story of hatred and jealousy that is really quite gripping.
What happened?
Episode 39, Lone Wolf. Buzz tells a story from his earlier Space Ranger days where he was reckless and unjust to the laws of catching criminals by the book. After quitting Star Command, he crash lands in the yard of a noble family, where he'll learn noble deeds before returning back to work at Star Command. Stock Doom sound effects strike again. Episode 40, Planet of the Lost. multiple crews have gotten lost around a certain sector of the galaxy. In this sector, they come across an unknown planet where they find a large group of inhabitants since stranded on this planet full of primitive alien threats known as the Shriekers. They've built their own society which Team Lightyear will have to adapt to as they attempt to resolve the situation, as well as deal with a particular individual who to the crew is unknowingly responsible for the Shriekers in the first place. Episode 41, Revenge of the Raenoks. The Raenoks are a species that have been here and there throughout the series. I consider them not very noteworthy. There have been other recurring characters before that I haven't mentioned, but mostly because it isn't necessary to bring them up for a plot synopsis. I guess this time I have to clarify, these are the Raenoks. They're powerful beings. That's about all that needs to be said. Oh, and they're back. Particularly, one of the Raenoks Team Lightyear imprisoned intends to be traded off in exchange for Booster, once the Raenok manage to capture Booster as they've planned. The Wikia states this is the very last episode they ever produced for the show. I kept dozing off during this episode, but generally I just find the Raenoks are really boring. Unfortunately, generic foes for the show. Doesn't help that nothing in this episode's really interesting either. I think they knew the episode was lacking something because they even threw Booster's parents and the little alien girl from Strange Invasion in here for no particular reason. Episode 42, The Starthought. Mira's father makes a Dart-esque ship, said to be the fastest, most maneuverable ship in the galaxy. Yes, Mira's father who dislikes all things Space Ranger. What? Well anyways, the ship can only be manned by a Tangean. Mira is the only Tangean Space Ranger, so I guess you could call her the original Starthought. Warp Dark Matter steals the Starthought. Now the team has to somehow get it back. Episode 43, Millenial Bugs. A species of bugs once thought extinct are now realized to only hatch once a millennia. The species is very territorial and known to be capable of destroying entire planets. Miss Furbana plans to keep them safe in preservation of their species, as does Zurg. However, what she doesn't realize is Zurg has sinister plans for them beyond their preservation. Episode 44, Conspiracy. Buzz Lightyear has been set up, quite realistically too. How could it be? Oh, of course, it's the 5 Gargantuans again. You know, I find it quite unrealistic how Buzz gets put in the slammer no questions asked. Beyond all reasonable doubt. Does that part of the law exist in space? One would hope. There's some smart moments in this episode, like when Buzz is nearly set up for a second time by using his own hands, using some reverse psychology. Episode 45, At Large on a Small Planet. Another Gargantuan episode. On planet Gargantua, the ambassador is planning to build a Pizza Planet restaurant. The Gargantuan rebels are, of course, not happy about their peaceful developments for some reason. The inhabitants seem to be ridiculously stupid, because what is obviously a terrorist attack by the rebels is mistaken for the doing of Team Lightyear. The LGMs make a shrink belt for the team to head back there and try to level things out. Literally. Eventually, the rebels manage to steal their belts and use them to get bigger. But, in theory, shouldn't the belt only make them even smaller? I mean, it's not like they were already big and then shrunk from there. I don't know. Episode 46, Sunquake. Someone's basically cosplaying Shiv Katall. I never explained who he was in fear of spoiling a previous episode. I guess I have to now. Shiv Katall was Buzz Lightyear in disguise. He had to retire the outfit because Zurg found out. So now who is this imposter?
Now let's see who this Shiv Katall is. Hello, Lightyear. So nice to see myself again.
It's the evil Buzz Lightyear from the alternate dimension. Evil Buzz ascends into the sun. Now Team Lightyear are tasked with the difficult objective to ascend into the sun. They find a secret base above the atmosphere, where Evil Lightyear is located, who happens to be joining forces with Gravitina. What a beautiful duology. How come this villain is so rarely used while the other generic villains like the Raenok get more showtime in this series? Anyhow, the plot for this episode is actually quite ingenious, and is a very well done amalgamation of previous lore in the series to make one exciting adventure. Episode 47, First Missions. The team is undergoing a stressful mission while they wait for Buzz Lightyear to arrive. As they fight against evil, they reminisce on their first adventures with Lightyear in flashback form. This isn't repeat footage from earlier episodes, rather origin stories.
I met her once.
You saved my planet once.
It ends off with an epic battle between Zurg and Buzz, where they finally use those mech suits as seen in the introduction. Episode 48, Large Target. Team Lightyear goes on a group vacation. XR poses as Booster to be allowed into a no-robot gambling group. He wins a lot of money which upsets the owner, causing him to put a bounty for Booster's head, whilst Booster himself is in reality completely uninvolved. Now XR has to make certain of Booster's safety from multiple bounty hunters, all because of his own selfish desires. Episode 49, War and Peace and War. An alien race has converted their entire species into pure energy, who both call upon and hypnotize both Star Command's LGMs and Zurg's grubs to try and render Planet Z and Star Command defenseless as an effort to restore peace to the galaxy. What is he, stupid? There's more violence beyond those two. Trade world, anyone? I don't know if this episode is in order either, because they show some clips from future episodes during a weird singing and dancing number. Episode 50, Lost in Time. Ooh, 3D models. Yeah, that's something that happened on rare occasion in the show. In fact, all those which had this type of stuff seem to have a bit of a different animation style. One I'd call improved. Something I could also say about Nos 4A2. Everything is far smoother and characters are given far more expression. What do the credits say? Clearly this was a different team than most of the other episodes. Ah, so this one was animated by Walt Disney Animation Japan, digitized by T2 Studios. Most other episodes were done by Jade Animation International Limited, located in Hong Kong. Take for example this scene here with Mira. I guarantee that if this episode was developed in Hong Kong, Mira would have displayed nowhere near that amount of emotion in her animation. Instead, she'd probably have a very stable body, with little if any movement, whilst Buzz would probably never even turn around, only facing one direction the entirety of the scene. Looking back, I can see that Nos 4A2 was also animated by their Japanese division, and by the way, they're also responsible for the movie pilot I've since reviewed. I think in that video I said that the series was done by Jade Animation. I'm only now figuring out that the Japanese division did do a couple episodes. Okay, so back to the episode. In a high-speed pursuit with Buzz, Zurg chases him into a black hole where he wakes up in the future to realize he's been given great honors in his death for luring Zurg into a black hole where he was never seen or heard from again.
Commander Booster, President Nova, XR with a mustache.
This was one of my favorite episodes growing up because of how trippy it is. The whole time you're led to... well, no, I'm not going to spoil it. This one is very smart, and it might actually be my favorite of the series.
To infinity and even further!
Episode 51, Rookie of the Year. It's time for the annual Rookie of the Year award. Buzz's 3 partners were each nominated, but who will win?
In case Zurg strikes again.
Buzz, pick me! Okay, if Zurg attacks, I'll be like, oh.
And now comes the sucking up.
You two draw their fire while I go steal back the device.
Why don't you two draw their fire while I steal the device? Right out of the way!
Episode 52, Wirewolf. Or should I say, Revenge of the Monsters, as this listing of Wirewolf here is total bogus. We start off the episode with an immediate flashback to Wirewolf.
I gotta be 100% sure you're not gonna flip out again and chew up your fellow ranger. I can't risk it. Time Parsec is discharged from Star Command.
What a coincidence that on this day, all the monsters return to take hold of Parsec. Well, I guess if it was his last day on duty, supposedly, now's the time to attack. XL, Nos 4A2, and Ty Parsec, the Wirewolf, will now be using their combined efforts to take over Planet Z and become rulers of the galaxy. As is typical with Nos 4A2 episodes, more freaky stuff happens. The episode ends with many intriguing developments, such as XL joining the Rangers once again, Nos 4A2 going completely foobar, and Ty Parsec going back to normal. A touching resolution to an ongoing, series-wide problem. If I were to reorder the series, I would make this the finale.
Oh, it's nice to be me again.
Episode 53, Rescue Mission. Star Command received a distress beacon from an unknown origin. They, however, sent them instructions on how to build a teleporter over to their location. Buzz takes it to find an insectoid race has had their queen kidnapped. All the while, Cosmo, the restaurant owner, is having a bug problem.
Well, I'm ready for you, no matter what.
There! No more little buggy footprints!
Cosmo?
Episode 54, Star Smasher.
The evil Emperor Zurg has kidnapped one of our LGMs!
And the reason is to steal their plans for a trash compactor that Zurg will use to crush anything from a tick to an entire star. In particular, the Sun. Capital planet confirmed as Earth, I guess. Buzz will have to make his way through the emptiness of a black hole with a new experimental device from the LGMs to bring the Sun back. Episode 55, Enemy Without a Face. Team Lightyear is on the lookout for new planets when they come face to face with one they didn't anticipate. They get sucked in and crash land after Mira and XR take off in the escape shuttle which automatically launched them before Booster and Buzz could get on. The duos are now separated on an unknown planet. They both meet up with individual tribe members who tell of an ancient yet ongoing civil battle on their planet. The twist? Each duo is now convinced of their tribal compadre, whom of which happen to be on opposing sides. Their fight has been ongoing due to a parasite sticking on the back of their heads, which happens to be vulnerable to extreme temperatures. Once the parasites are removed, they can live in harmony as they did 900 years ago.
I don't even remember why my people were always fighting with yours.
The parasites flee from the tribe, which quickly find a new host to head crab onto. Buzz plucks them off, but they multiply. XR, being the only non-organic life form, will have to find out about the vulnerability on his own. Episode 56, Good Old Buzz. Team Lightyear is fighting against Torque when all of a sudden... Buzz has come to the past with his time travel watch because...
Today,
Princess Mira Nova will die.
Let's hypothesize that it took up to this point in time for time travel to be invented. Buzz's first idea is to go back in time to save Mira. Why does he choose the very day she dies to come back to? Anyways, the episode focuses on the team trying to get information out of good old Buzz because he can't remember for crap. All the while, tons of threats come across the team, leaving them wondering if this is the big danger he speaks of. Mira gets the day off back at Star Command, so technically this is all for nothing, is it not?
Mira Nova to Buzz Lightyear, I am here to assist you.
Oh no.
Okay, never mind. Episode 57, Return to Karn. The President is on her way to vacation, escorted by Mira Nova. However, Zurg is one step ahead and tries to ambush them. In a tussle, they'll end up crash landing on Karn, which is the same planet Miss Verbana resides. They'll have to make their way through Karn to a safer location so they can signal a Star Command rescue ship. As the rest of Team Lightyear comes to check up on things, Buzz gets tied up with Verbana again. Episode 58, Speed Trap. It's episodes like this one that demonstrate how the show at times took inspiration from Star Trek. When I was younger, I could probably say this was my favorite. Filled with mystery and intrigue, this one focuses on a seemingly abandoned ship that is going way too fast, dangerously trespassing through space. Team Lightyear will have to land aboard and find out who's responsible when they realize its only inhabitants are leftover cleaning bots. The ambiance of this episode is superb, and the humor is acute to the series as always.
Traitors. Mira, please, sir, you'll have to excuse her potty mouth.
Sir, are you insulting us?
Mira, XR, put a lid on it.
Why, you are insulting us.
No, please, Mr. Ambassador, we meant no disrespect.
Sorry I'm late. The restroom on this floor is broken. Oh, thank goodness.
Booster!
I can't recommend this one enough, and I don't want to give too much away because I do hope you'll check it out yourselves. A while ago, I sent someone this episode as an introduction to the show, however, and they told me they didn't really like it because it seemed like your average science fiction story. So maybe this isn't for everyone, but I loved it a bunch. Episode 59, Holiday Time. Zurg is trying to ruin the holiday by removing all Christmas decorations on the planets united with the Galactic Alliance. The horror! What a fiend! Buzz will have to inherit Santa Claus's advanced time-stopping technology to bring Christmas cheer back to the Galactic Alliance before Christmas Day. It has some high-speed battles with the evil Emperor that are quite epic, and old men in extravagant clothing.
I love traps.
Episode 60, Opposites Attract. A mysterious gravitational vortex device has appeared on Mahamba 6, the vacation planet. Gravitina is up to it again, and she still wants a piece of that Buzz ass. Granted, Buzz does not want to give a piece of that ass, so Gravitina gets mad and blasts him. But he's okay. Well, kind of okay. Now Buzz gets to see how it feels to get a piece of Gravitina's head.
Your head, big.
I know my head is big! You mean you can't undo this?
Alien technology.
But you're aliens! Come on, guys, there's gotta be something you can do.
Big hat.
Episode 61, Ancient Evil. Another episode that takes cues from the Star Trek handbook of mystery and intrigue. No, that isn't a real thing, I'm being metaphorical. Nonetheless, another favorite from my childhood.
Anybody home?
That's it. After that, bupkis.
As Zurg monologues to his grubs, the ultimate evil resides on this planet, something that was only folklore until today when Star Command uncovered it. Of course, Zurg wants it. He calls out for warp dark matter.
Approaching Planet X.
Warp detects the evil power close by, but to his surprise, it was closer than he thought. He vanishes out of thin air. Well, kinda.
Warp, is that you? Help me.
Episode 62, 42. Perhaps a strange way to end off this series, but at the very least, a charming one. Valkyrian raiders are invading an autopiloted freighter. The Space Rangers show up, and as quickly as the Valkyrian raiders appear, they disappear. After some debriefing, they come across them again, leaving some damage to their ship. XR is tasked by Buzz to do a status report on this damage. For whatever reason, this is the time 42 decides to reveal herself as not just a spaceship, but a female robot? Even though 42 has had to be abandoned a few times in episodes past, I don't know. Maybe this was their latest model revision or something. The two start off arguing but quickly become very acquainted with a wee little robotic romance. Problem, 42 doesn't want to be known by the team, because she doesn't like them for insulting her on multiple occasions. Buzz thinks the ship is having serious issues, so tells XR they're going to give it a complete overhaul back at Star Command. Of course, that includes wiping what they don't know exists, so XR has to find a way to keep his newly found partner up and running. The two go solo off into the galaxy together, quickly coming across the Valkyrians who recognize their ship. 42 reveals herself at the last minute as they escape the Valkyrians' presence in order to save herself, XR, and the crew. The episode ends with a surgical removal of 42's life from the ship into her own self-contained robotic suit. And I gotta say, they sure made her cute. From then on, XR and 42 live happily ever after XR gets friend-zoned. The end. Buzz Lightyear of Star Command, the entire series summarized. I had no idea this would be such a big task when I sat down to start this video, so a few little pointers before I conclude. Firstly, there is no definitive ending to the series. Again, check out Jace Deal's video if you want to know more about that, but my point is, enemies are still at large. Story arcs are unfinished. Or I guess the people behind it knew that that could very well be a possibility at any point in time. Now, I have to be honest, I do think this show is awesome, but there are a lot of episodes that are just kinda meh. No, not bad, not annoying or gross or anything like that, just some episodes seem to drag on with concepts that aren't very interesting in the first place. Now, don't get me wrong, pretty much any episode from this series is a decent watch for a lazy afternoon where nothing's on, but simply put, I think the show had a lot of duds. I feel like half of the episodes are only worth sitting through on your own time if you love the other half. I think what you have to keep in mind, though, is that I basically watched through the entire series in the span of a weekend. No show is designed to be watched that frequently in such a short period at a time. Although I will admit there are shows out there that you can watch so frequently and still love. But to put it simply, even the not-so-great episodes of this series are probably not as bad as I may have made them seem. Truthfully, while I grew up with this show, I didn't watch anywhere near most of it. Only like 20 or so episodes, give or take. Why? Well, not all of these were shown on ABC Kids, which is how I watched it growing up. I never had the Disney Channel. Still, I feel like objectively ABC was given some of the best. And maybe that was on purpose, to persuade people into getting the Disney Channel. At the end of the day, Buzz Lightyear of Star Command is a show that, despite being primarily aimed at kids, still managed to appeal to adult audiences with its humor and exciting storylines that were sometimes very engaging. Other times, not so much. But all shows have their hits and misses. I feel pretty much the same about Star Trek, honestly. And with that said, hey, maybe it's just me. There is a lot of fun to be had with the Buzz Lightyear gang, and while I do think the show ran about as long as it should have, I just wish it left a longer impression on people. All I know is Buzz Lightyear of Star Command was a pretty darn good show.
Okay, first of all, that's just his version, but that aside, I say we blow this ship up and get on with our weekend. Who's with me? A couple of you.